And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. We're going to be going at a rather high pace today as we are pretty late coming out with the video. Today's story is filaments, and you might be able to see some in this video. There are certainly a lot of solar filaments at the moment. The likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains at 100%. We'll tell you all about it here at the Smash News Network. Least busted name in news. This is the last 24 hours in SUVI, the GOES SUVI 171 plus 304 angstroms. And I would draw your attention to this area down here. A huge plasma reorientation and or coronal mass ejection happened late in the day yesterday afternoon. We made a video all about it because it looked like it might have an Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. Although it looks like the plasma may be just spreading across the southern portion of the solar disk. So here's the northern portion. You can see filaments up there. Indeed, there is a crown prominence up there. You can see one suspended filament of plasma there, about, 5 Earth diameters in length. There are a whole series of large filaments rising in the northeast as well. So again, expect to watch more coronal mass ejections occurring. The likelihood of those is 100%. So here's the equatorial zoom, and you can see all that plasma moving off to the west there. It looks like it all headed in a westerly direction there. It looked for a minute like it might be headed right toward Earth. That's why we made a video about it. Here's another view of that, and you can see that what we call limb darkening there, as plasma gets in between the bright part of the sun and the GOES SUVI. Limb darkening is often a feature associated with Earth-directed coronal mass ejections. So that said, let's talk about data that's missing. The SDO site is down because of expired security certificates and errors on their end. So we ain't got no SDO data. Here's solarmonitor.org's imagery of the current sunspot situation. There are 10 groups at the moment shown here. So we're going to see a drop-off in the sunspot number today, assuming that no new groups rise or form, as there are a number of sunspot groups setting in the western limb. And let's take a moment to talk about channel affiliates and paid promotions. So we do receive commissions on the Redbubble sales, as you may have expected. It is a rather tiny commission, and we are putting out these products as much to advertise the channel as we are to make money off of it. So anyway, save 20% on everything at the Redbubble shop. We put up 2 new designs yesterday as per a viewer request. One is May That Solar Wind Be At Your Back with the smashamash.com homepage, and the other one is We'll Keep an Eye on It with the YouTube channel. This one features an SDO 171 angstroms wavelength video image, extremely high res, and this is the 304 angstroms wavelength. So check out those new products in the Redbubble shop. Links below the video to that. And let's get to Earth for a quick moment here. Fagradalsfjall continues to erupt here. Here's the Little Herter Norder lava fissure. You can see a cinder cone building there. It looks like it's a bit of a lull of activity, not a big lava flow happening there. If so, it's kind of under a crusty surface. So some action continuing in Iceland. This is what else is erupting on planet Earth. There's a great image of some active nighttime lava flows. Eldi, part of the Reykjanes Ridge. Fagradalsfjall, Reykjanes, etc. So a huge amount of new real estate showing up there at Iceland. Also, Bagana continues to... Whoa! 54,000-foot ash plume, folks. It's a stratospheric injection at Bougainville Island, Papua New Guinea. 54,000-foot ash plume, folks. So, yeah, that's... you might be expecting to see some purple skies as a result of that. The Bagana volcano producing a 54,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. It's a flight level 540. That is a significant volcanic eruption. Again, that is a stratospheric injection of volcanic ash Also, perhaps water vapor there, depending on what kind of explosion it is. Bougainville there. The Bagana volcano there. The largest volcanic eruption in a long time. Lungila also exploding on the Isle of New Britain. That's a 6,000-foot ash plume. Semeru producing a 14,000-foot ash plume as it explodes at East Java, Indonesia. Flight level 140. Popocatépetl, not sure if it's erupting. Volcanic ash not observed. Fuego, however, exploding in Guatemala. Flight level 150. Flight level 220 from Sabancaya as it explodes. It's a 22,000-foot ash plume. Flight level 220. Moving right along to seismic activity. It has been low in the past 24 hours. Here's a 90-day bar graph to sum things up for the past 90 days. A bit of a 7 magnitude earthquake drought happening here. Here are the past 24 hours. We'll cite quakes of a 5 magnitude or higher. There was a 5.2 in Mexico. That was at 16:33 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. There was a 4.6 off the coast of Oregon there, so that is significant to the Cascadia fault zone, of course. Perhaps a foreshock there, so be aware of that. We don't usually cite quakes below a 5 magnitude, and that's it. Only one 5+ magnitude quake in the past 24 hours. Next, we're going to go back to space, and let's start where we left off here with the southern hemisphere of the closest star. Here's 304 angstroms from the GOES-R. Pretty sweet imagery there. And there you can see that massive CME. I suspect some of that turned into an outflow, as I don't see a lot of plasma splashing back down there. I suspect that did produce a CME. I just don't think it is an earthly directed one. I think it's off to the southwest based on what I see so far. So this is one of those things, folks, that experience means a lot. And I can certainly see some ejecta there leaving around the southwestern limb, western limb area. We'll let it play one more time. There you go. You can see that there is some coronal darkening. How about one more play? Let's let it run through once more. Right over here, you'll see some coronal darkening. You see that? It's an indication that it was indeed a coronal mass ejection. It could still have an earthly directed component here. And we're going to do an analysis of that momentarily. First, a 10.7 centimeter radial flux all the way down to 181 solar flux units. There's the 1-year graph of the radial flux. To put that in context for you, the black line is the radial flux, the red line is the sunspot number. Those are the two most proportional data sets we have when we say solar activity. What we mean is typically the radial flux and the sunspot number, although flaring, coronal mass ejections, filaments, and other things do also figure in. Here's a space weather enthusiast dashboard, and we had basically some dud CME impacts. The final of 4 has already arrived, basically right on schedule here. In fact, very close to our exact forecasts. No surprise to our regular viewers. Congratulations on realizing that the Smash News Network least busted name in news exists. This is the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, and this last CME has been the highest speed of all. We'll get to that in a minute. So as far as more activity on the way, I don't think so. Although there could be a sudden magnetic field shift, as there is a CME striking Earth's magnetosphere as we speak. We've just seen a decrease in the fields. Well, we'll get to it. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. That is our geospace magnetosphere movie. It depicts magnetohydrodynamic pressure, the units of which are nanopascals. So there you can see the little uptick in the pressure on the bow shock region, which would be to your left. The bow shock is that area where you see the blue turn to red. It's the leading edge of Earth's magnetosphere with respect to the solar wind. That is where Bremsstrahlung, or breaking radiation, is happening. Here are the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And again, it was a bit of a dud. I mean, we may see some aurorae. Share with us on Twitter or even on Instagram. Those are the two best places. We are also on Threads. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. It's the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground depicted in nanotesla magnetic flux density. So here's the Boulder magnetometer, and we did just see an uptick in that. So that was associated with the latest, the 4 of 4 coronal mass ejection impacts. And of course, our regular viewers would be well aware that my favorite way to view the likelihood of having the aurora visible and also having a damage to a power grid is depicted here in the geoelectric field map. So when there is incoming solar radiation, incoming solar plasma, I should say, not really radiation, the incoming solar particle impacts. This helps to show where they are likely to be happening, and this will help you to be able to see the aurora, as this is real-time empirical data. It's literally just showing the amount of voltage per kilometer in the power grid. So that is highly recommended when CME impacts arrive. Now, we got some warnings yesterday about a KP5. We only got the KP 4.33, so geomagnetic unrest was all we got. And it is very hard to depict what the magnetic fields will be like, folks. You just don't know what they're going to be like until they're here. They turned out to be weak and not advantageous to geomagnetic storms. So here's the latest CME impact that's just happened a few hours ago, and it's basically right on schedule. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, right in line, just about as forecast. So there you go. There's the latest CME impact. There you can see an increase in the plasma temperature, an increase in the solar wind speed, an increase in the solar wind density, a change in the phi angle, and a shift in the magnetic fields all at once. Now, that had weak magnetic fields, so that did not help to induce any sort of electrical current in the Earth system. Current conditions are just under 7 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Solar wind speed here, 516 kilometers per second. And right now, if the magnetic fields suddenly shift, if this line shifts into negative BZ, we'll go straight into geomagnetic storm conditions quite promptly. The plasma is hot, the plasma is fast, and the plasma is not super diffuse. So just a shift in the magnetic fields will put us into geomagnetic storm conditions. Here are the GOES magnetometers for the past 3 days, and you can see some pretty wild motions there. In the past 12 hours or so, we've had quite a swing. And the latest midnight local time for those satellites, depicted by those red and blue M's, those are midnight local time for the GOES 16 and GOES 18. We've been seeing some pretty low highs here in the past few hours. So some new plasma regimes arriving there. And let's take a look at the top view ecliptic plane field plot. Earth is just right in the middle of a South Pole-oriented current sheet there. Nothing too exciting going on. No major changes happening there unless we see some new activity rising or forming in the east. At the moment, that should be pretty on schedule. It should be pretty predictable when the sector boundary crossing shows up, when Earth moves from the South Pole current sheet into the North Pole current sheet. It's a few days out yet, at least. Here's our line of sight field plot. Here the sun's B field depicted in blue, north and south polar fields in green and red, respectively, and the the gong magnetogram in grayscale, which brings us to coronal holes. And sadly, the SDO site is down, so here's the gong 2 data. Don't worry, we do have some coverage of coronal holes here besides the gong 2. So we've got entirely, oh, there are some North Pole coronal holes opening up there. So right in the north central portion of the solar disk, we do have a North Pole coronal hole. So I believe it's this one right here. So a little bit of mixing in there of North Pole coronal holes. All the rest of those are South Pole coronal holes. So these are south. This is south. Over here we've got South Pole coronal holes, and this little one up here is north. So again, sector boundary crossing is way off, and let's move to sunspots. No new sunspot groups. So we're going to have a dip in the sunspot number today. Again, let me reiterate that. Today we will have a dip in the sunspot number unless we see new sunspots rise or form. So that is a forecast based on these obvious facts. There still is a significant probability of an X-class solar flare. Look at the chances there. Over 50% for an X-class flare according to this flare monitor. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on 3372. And when I say eye on, pardon the pun. Again, SDO site is down, so let's just move on to talk about social media. Are you on social media? Have you completely unplugged from social media? Let us know in the comments. Of course, YouTube is technically considered social media. If you don't follow us on Instagram, you're missing a bunch of exclusive content. So check us out over there if you haven't. We're up to 544 followers there now. You can also find us on Twitter. Thanks to everybody who shares tweets and so forth. And exclusive content, of course, on Twitter. And no, we don't typically follow what Twitter recommends us to like. The algorithm is really just as pathetic as all the other social media sites. The thing about Twitter, folks, is that Twitter is actually a little more elegant than Meta and Google sites, although the censorship is still rampant. Rampant censorship. Shout out to all of our Twitter followers. If you want to name filaments after living people, do it over there. Follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament. And you can find the links on the homepage at smashomash.com. And welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. There are our social media links. The best way to send an instant message is to, if you want to text me, the best way to do it is to use the Discord channel. So you can always get a permanent invite link to the Discord chat right there on the homepage. You can also find the Redbubble shop, links to the YouTube channel, Threads, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify music site. Check out Golden Cat Productions. We're all over the internet at Golden Cat Productions. And we built our own website in response to pathetic censorship by Facebook, now known as Meta, one of the most pathetic software manufacturers in the history of software manufacturing. Facebook, what a joke. It's completely broken junkware. Let's take a look at energetic particles and flares next. The proton flux remains flatlined. No relativistic particles showing up here for days, and no major spikes for like a month or two. We did have 2 M-class flares in the past 24 hours, which we're going to show you here momentarily. The first one was the largest, an M3, approximately just under an M3 class flare, peak flux at 740 universal time. And the second one was a M2 point something, M2.2. That was at 1010 universal time this morning. So 2 M-class flares, and let's see what we got. There is the GOES 16 SUVI and 131 angstroms. So it looks like those M flares actually came from this group down here. Nope. Okay, one came from this group and one came from this group. So yeah, likelihood of major solar flares is very high, higher than 50% according to the automated flare monitor system. And what that is doing is it's looking at magnetic shear parameters. So don't be surprised to see an X-class flare despite this brief reduction in sunspot number and radio flux. Excuse me. So here's a little closer view, the equatorial zoom in that wavelength. So the 2 most likely places for a large solar flare, including a possible X-class flare in the northeast and in the southwestern limbs. We'll talk more about filaments here in a minute. First, let's get through some other data about what's going on overhead. Of course, we encourage our viewers to look up. If you do see the aurora, make sure you take imagery of it using your camera, as it is primarily ultraviolet light not visible to the human naked eye. There's what's going on overhead at the moment. We just had Venus and Mars rise. And if you're viewing the dusk sky, you'll get a great view of the 3rd brightest object in the sky, Venus, and the 4th currently largest brightest object in the sky, Mars. So perhaps check that out. Jupiter up there on the ecliptic as well. Here's your solar system forecast. And we like to orient our viewers so that they know what's coming. So before we talk about CMEs, we like to show people where things are in the solar system. Some people still think that planets are in charge of solar activity or their fate. So we like to show this. Here's the 1-week forecast for the solar system. And that's where things will be in a week. Did you know that more people think the Earth is flat now than did 2,000 years ago? It's just because there are so many idiots on the internet claiming that the Earth is flat. So next we're going to show CMEs. And it should be an interesting excessive number of frames there for yesterday. So let's see if we see any outflows here from that massive CME that we saw in the southern hemisphere. And I suspect that went off to the southwest. So it was a pretty major CME. There was definitely some kind of material flowing out of the corona there. I suspect right toward the end of the video there, you can see this CME coming out in this area. Right here. That outflow there may have an earthly directed component. That is what you'd call a stealth coronal mass ejection. If that does arrive, it'll arrive on late in the day on the probably early in the day to midday on the 18th. Early to midday on the 18th, you can expect another minor CME glancing blow type impact based on the huge CME that occurred rather spontaneously from the southern hemisphere yesterday. By the way, there's another one happening today. These are another 66 frames from today, and there's another massive CME coming out of the southwest. That one probably does not have an earthly directed component. And here are our LASCO coronagraphs. There is a shocking lack of data there on the C3. That is not helpful. The C2 looks like it has some data there. Massive CME there popping off early this morning. So here's this one from yesterday. Yeah, that could have an earthly directed component, believe it or not. There's that one from this morning. Quite spectacular indeed. No earthly component to that one is likely. We'll also show stereo A, and we show this diagram daily because, well, stereo A and the Earth are practically at the same place in terms of angular viewpoint to the sun. So here is the stereo A coronagraph. So let's move this forward here. And you see this line down here, this line right here, that is the outline of that CME. So, and there's that one from this morning, a very, very dense core coming out there. And again, the data is lacking on the Soho LASCO C3. Let's go to our custom coronagraphs right after we show some more 171 angstroms wavelength. So there's 171. Also from the GOES-R. And this region down here produced that massive CME this morning. It was associated with an M-class flare. There's a 24-hour video, once again, of 171 angstroms. And here we've got the Soho LASCO C2 and C3 and the GOES-R 195 angstroms. So when you move this forward, first of all, I want to watch this area. It looks actually like a double pulse there. So there may be multiple events happening there at the same time, roughly. There could be a CME on the far side that is masking that one. Right there. Let's zoom in a little closer. I wouldn't rule out the possibility that some of that ejecta is headed toward Earth. So again, expect it sometime around like midday on the 18th. Early to midday on July 18th. Could have another minor coronal mass ejection impact. Here we've zoomed in to just show the 195 angstroms by itself. And that is a sweet wavelength. That is the wavelength that makes us not too disappointed when we see the SDO website down, because that is an awesome wavelength. 195 angstroms from the GOES SUVI. One of the iron species not covered by the SDO. And again, there are a crazy number of filaments rising in the eastern limb there. So coronal mass ejections will continue throughout the day today. Here's another close-up of that awesome event in the southern hemisphere. And here is the equatorial zoom. So exciting stuff going on for solar activity here. And we're delighted to bring it to you from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Again, don't forget to press like, subscribe, share, etc. Tell your friends and foes about the channel. We need your help to get the content onto people's screens, as we don't seem to think that YouTube is recommending the videos. So here's the El Teide, Spain ground-based solar observatory, and you can see major filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. All those dark regions that overlap the solar disk are plasma filaments, and all of the bright regions that hang off the edge of the solar disk, those are prominences. You can see one down here, a prime example there, a filament which is also a prominence. Coronal mass ejections slated to continue, mark my words. And if you think our forecasts are inaccurate, you haven't been watching the channel. Because the forecasts are insanely accurate, oftentimes more accurate than NOAA and NASA. No offense to those agencies. They are doing their jobs in good faith due diligence, we think. So here are the past couple of hours in the GOES 18 SUVI 304 angstroms wavelength. And is it any surprise that CMEs are happening right now? This filament up here is not going to remain sustained like that. That part of that will eject. Part of this filament over here will likely eject. So also crown prominences there at both poles. And we're not even at solar maximum yet. It's exciting stuff. Perhaps our bonus features are exciting stuff, so let's do those. Charging hazards for satellites. Currently, minor ones of the surface charging variety occurring in the central Pacific Ocean. Those are low-energy electrons building up on the outside of spacecraft. Unlikely to cause any major communications breakdowns. Here is the electron flux over the past 3 days, and you can see that's cratered with multiple CME impacts. A total of 4 of them showed up exactly as predicted. Here's the one-year graph to put it in context. And again, we're at very low levels of electron flux here at the moment. That is likely an anomalous reading caused by the incoming plasma, but it does show us insight into what's going on. So here is the forecast model. And you can expect that forecast to be pretty close to right on there. I suspect the green box is the forecast, the yellow diamonds are the observation. We'll show the layer of the ionosphere where that electron flux is measured. It's the F layer. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with these distances, chemical concentrations, and so on in kilometers. Here is the F layer, and as predicted, lots of red showing up due to coronal mass ejection impacts. Again, not a surprise at all to our regular viewers. This data courtesy of the Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology, showing the vibrational frequency at the bridge between Earth and space. That gas is very diffuse, and its vibration gives us insight into what's going on in the uppermost portion of Earth weather, or you could say the lowermost portion of space weather. That depicts the entire previous day. And we'll also show the anomalygram for sake of data archiving. So here is the anomalygram. It depicts anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. Again, quite a bit of red on the map there, although the CME impacts have been kind of weak, so you'll have quite a bit of variation happening in the ionosphere. And let's show the latest image briefly. We don't want the video to be too lengthy. Again, we are running very late today. So here is the latest image. That's 1345 universal time ionogram and 1345 universal time anomalygram. Again, lots of red showing up. We'll also show the total electron content. Feel free to pause the video in this frame if you are not familiar with the distances to those things. In miles, here's the total electron content, and we're seeing major anomalies here continuing in the southern hemisphere. Once again, completely predicted. as we see more electrons out of their usual places when we see CME impacts. So this is sort of a cumulative effect going on here, the total electron content forecast. It's depicting free electrons from ground level to about 12,500 miles of altitude, the location of the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt, where your GPS satellites are located. Major GPS errors there likely south of Australia, the Indian Ocean, south of Africa, the Southern Ocean, and Antarctica. We'll let that play through one more time. Again, major anomalies showing up in the total electron content. That is consistent with CME impacts and also coronal hole high-speed streams. Yeah, plasma from space. It affects the Earth system. So here's the total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average. And folks, this one looks like a serious signal here. So now this could be space weather, or this could be an earthly generated signal, but check it out. San Andreas Fault there. Is the San Andreas Fault emitting a signal showing up in the space weather data? In other words, is a 6+ magnitude earthquake coming to Southern California? Check it out. Look at all that red. That's a huge electron content anomaly. You see that? So there could be a 6+ magnitude quake coming to that area in the next 4 days. We'll play it through one more time, and then we'll show you the latest solar data before we move to our meteorology segment. So this is a gong. This is a gong intensity gram from the El Teide, Spain observatory. We've got it zoomed way in here to show you sunspots. And we'll briefly zoom out so you can see time and date stamps as well. Here you go. Part of the National Solar Observatory. Mostly stable are those groups in the past 24 hours. Here's the gong magnetogram from the same place, El Teide, Spain. Again, no major changes happening there. Most of those groups stable. Expect a decrease in the sunspot number today as a bunch of groups are setting in the west. And that is where our space weather content ends for the day. Let's get to Earth weather. Yeah, Earth weather. Oh my God, it's burning up. The planet is burning up, folks. Dear God, it's something to write home about or something. Check it out. It's 120 degrees there north of Saudi Arabia. Also, parts of the Sahara are over 100 degrees. And if you want to see the coldest part, it's like 94 degrees below zero in Antarctica, where it is wintertime. And leave us a comment if you're interested in wintering in Antarctica. Did you know that if you want to winter in Antarctica, you've got to be able to shovel snow? Yeah, everybody has to shovel snow in the wintertime or they'll die. There's only like half a dozen people that actually winter in Antarctica. You got to be physically fit, you got to be a science nerd, and you got to be able to shovel snow. You got to have a good back and a good brain. Or you're not wintering in Antarctica. Now, of course, Antarctica is on my bucket list. I'm not so sure I want to actually winter there, although I do enjoy shoveling snow and crazy desolation and weird science stuff. So maybe it's coming. I don't know. It's possible. Anyway, that's what's going on in terms of temperature. That's temperature at 3 meters. So the hottest part of the world right now is indeed Saudi Arabia and the area to its north. Anyway, let's take a look at the wind maps. So here is the surface wind scenario for the central world. Powerful low here over the UK. Check out that strong rotating upper level low. See that counterclockwise rotation there. Might even translate to the jet stream level. Part of that indeed does. So there's the jet stream scenario. You can see the jet stream blowing backward here over the northern Indian Ocean. Here are the jet streams of the east. And if you're viewing the video from within this circle, press the freaking share button. Our saturation in this market is like 0%. So if you're viewing from Asia, make sure you press share And leave a comment. Let us know where you're coming from. Here is the surface wind scenario for the east. Surface wind scenario for the west. And the jet streams. Jet stream blowing backwards over the Gulf of Mexico and central Mexico. Check it out. Backward jet stream there. A 180-degree bend between the southern U.S. and the southern Gulf. So here is our temperature map. Once again, temperature is the story of the day, I guess. Hottest temperatures we could find were around the Middle East. That is the surface temperature of planet Earth. We did find some temperatures in Antarctica that were 94 degrees below zero. Greenland certainly doesn't look like it's burning up, as it is 11 degrees Fahrenheit there. 23 Fahrenheit there in southern Greenland. Although if you get all the way to the coast, it's kind of warm probably. Not too bad. 50 degrees there by the coast. And of course, the ocean temperatures are quite warm. So let's just take a brief look at that. There's the sea surface temperature scenario. Sea surface temperatures, they run the climate. You can measure the air all day long. And really, it's sea surface temperatures. If you think mankind controls the climate, mankind would have to control ocean temperatures. And I don't know how mankind would do that. But there's the actual heat latency of the planet. The sea surface temperatures, less than 1% of Earth's thermal capacity is in the atmosphere. Over 99% is in the water on Earth's surface. Anyway, here are the clouds above Earth's surface of the Western world. It's shortwave radiation from the Shortwave Radiation Satellite, part of the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. Equatorial cloud bands there over northern South America. Again, the jet stream blowing backwards over Gulf of Mexico. This may create some weather patterns that you are not used to. It is not because of chemtrails. It's not because of geoengineering or HARP or contrails in the troposphere or anything like that. It is because of the jet stream. These are natural features of the atmosphere. It is not magic. And it is not mankind. Next, your weather.gov map. Some major flooding in the forecast here. That's weather.gov, your National Weather Service map. If your location is lit, click your location, as there are some drenching rains, some ridiculous rains coming to eastern Pennsylvania, the mid-Atlantic states, also part of the Gulf Coast there. Weather.gov for your weather alerts. We showed you the key. We've also got some, looks like air quality alerts here. Is the smoke from Canada coming back? I don't know, but here is the 72-hour GFS temperature forecast in degrees Celsius. That's a temperature anomaly in degrees Celsius, by the way. Mostly hot in the Rockies and westward. Mostly cool in north-central U.S. and mostly hot in the northeast. Here's your 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast based on the same GFS model. Again, you can see systems moving in an odd direction here around the Gulf of Mexico. Again, it is because of the jet stream having a 180-degree bend. And we'll also show total accumulated precipitation there. So it looks like, let's see, it looks like Connecticut and New Hampshire are going to get an additional 3 inches of rain, 2.5 inches of rain. Heavy rains coming for New Mexico and Texas there. Like 5 inches of rain in some of those areas. That's your GFS 72-hour total accumulated precipitation forecast in inches. Next, your lightning mapper. That's the past about 10 hours of lightning. Heaviest lightning in the U.S. has somewhat ceased there, having occurred in especially northern Arkansas. Got kaplastered with the electrical plasma discharges of planet Earth. So here's a real-time map. We'll briefly zoom in here. It is lightningmaps.org. Next time you hear thunder, check it out. Highly recommended. If you want to appear to be a horror movie villain, learn how to forecast thunder and check out the activity of that cell. That is one concentrated cell from hell right there. Dag. Right on the banks of the Mississippi there. some major lightning activity there east of Pine Bluff. So that's what's going on. By the way, if you haven't pressed like, subscribe, share, etc., congratulations on realizing the channel exists. We're in the process of making all kinds of changes. If you've got a business that you'd like advertised on the channel, drop us a line. We will consider it. Thanks to our new subscribers. And again, don't forget to press the share button. YouTube generally does not seem to recommend the content, despite it being the ultimate daily space weather content. There is absolutely no competition. And by the way, welcome to the Neo Renaissance. If you want to support the channel via subscription services, become a member of the Smash team. You'll get additional content. You'll get email alerts, even at the bronze level, which will cost you $0 per month. Silver is $2.99 a month. Gold is $9.99 a month. And the best value is the gold annual paid-up subscription. Smashomash.com/Smash team. Give Smash staff a raise by becoming a gold or silver member. And the reason the gold annual paid-up subscription is the best value is because it includes complimentary merch. It's almost like getting 4 months of a gold membership for free. Again, there is additional content as well. So we're going to close out the video here with, there is the U.S. Doppler radar map from weather.gov. It's radar.weather.gov, by the way. We'll focus on the lower 48. We've got some severe weather here moving to the east-northeast. Cincinnati's going to get hit again. There's stuff on the way to Pittsburgh, etc. There you go. You can see the map. That's ground-based vertical motion in the air column. Here is space-based clouds and fog, shortwave radiation map. And here is the water vapor map. So here's an impulse of dry, massive air pushing through the center of the country. Here you can see the jet stream reversing direction as it blows backwards across the Gulf of Mexico. So that's what's going on. The water vapor map is a great way to understand what's going on. There is that Doppler radar. Let's zoom in on this area here briefly. Those systems are moving to the northeast or perhaps the east-northeast. Here is clouds and fog one more time. And your recap ends, and this video ends with the water vapor map. Once again, thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. We hope your bunker supplies have not gone bad, and we hope your YouTube viewership has not gone bad. Hopefully you're not intaking a bunch of nonsense on YouTube about space weather. The Smash News Network doesn't believe in nonsense. We believe in facts. So anyway, we'll see you next time. We might even see you later today, as coronal mass ejections are slated to continue, despite a dip in the sunspot number and the radio flux. Anyway, while I'm gone, may that solar wind be at your back. I am going back to the bunker again. All the stupid crap I've heard has encouraged me to jump in. Whoa!